I found that I was much happier when I started just like making decisions based on like what I thought was right and not worrying about any of the rest of the fog. Because look, when you think they're going to kill you or arrest you or whatever, you see your days become brighter, because you feel like there may be less of them. So you're kind of like, like I'm not going to worry about this. I remember I did a mushroom trip like 4 months ago or so, or 6 months ago, whatever it was. But I remember, man, I dove off this super high. I just wasn't worried about it. It was like, I might not be here that long. I'm just going to do what I want. And I was just, man, it really felt good. And I think a lot of my life, I got so worried about like the future and planning for this and prepping for this. And like, I didn't spend as much time in the moment. And I will say that's one of the things that I've been doing more often is just like living in the moment. And you will be happier when you do that. I think depression comes from focusing on the past or trying to perfect the future. And I'm OCD like you too. So we always want like everything to be perfect. And I think when you get in that mindset, it's hard because nothing's ever going to be perfect.
Why do you think it's so hard to not listen? Excuse me. Why do you think it's so hard to hear that inner dialogue where okay, I shouldn't do this or I should do this. And I know this is better for me, and to listen to that? Why is it so hard sometimes?
Because, man, it's like we live in a world of like immediate negative repercussions. You say one stupid thing on your pod or on a live, or you do some stupid thing and somebody catches it on camera, like your career could be over. I'm fortunate enough to be in a category where I'm not really cancelable anymore. Like, cause I don't care. I didn't do any brand deals. I don't take any money. Like I got offered $3 million to do a tweet about a crypto and I said no. So like I am not beholden to anybody. And I think that's very liberating and it's freeing. But a lot of people, it's unfortunately, like most people aren't in that spot where they can just be like, this is what I'm doing, and chips are going to fall where they may.
But do you think even if you weren't able to technically be in that spot, do you think being in that spot is how you get to that spot?
Yeah, it's kind of a strange thing. You almost have to let go and just do your thing. And it's crazy. Like people actually really respond well to that. I didn't realize it until it's one of those things where like you have to leap in order to like realize, and like I just leapt because like I felt like it was right. But the crazy thing is I thought I was going to be met with a really negative reception, and it was actually met with, not in the beginning, but like later, a more positive reception. But yeah, it's one of those things where you got to jump to know.
It's hard. It's hard to listen to that sometimes.
Well, it's hard because there's so many examples of people that jumped and the water wasn't very deep and they hit the rocks and they're paralyzed now. It's like you jump and you land in the water and it's deep and you come up. It's like, oh, that was easy. Well, it's like, okay, well, it happened to be, but there's going to be times when you jump and it's not. So, but look, I think when you follow your heart and when you do what you believe in, man, like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like, you know what I mean? You can't like, and here's another thing that I realized also too, is that in life, you don't even know what's good or what's bad until way, way, way down the line. So in the moment, you might think something's actually bad for you, but that actually might turn out to be a great thing because it leads to this and this and this. And, so like, the example I use all the time is like, if I would have graduated SEAL training, I probably would have like hung my hat on that and been like, oh, as a Navy SEAL, like that's enough. People respect that, whatever. Yeah. And I probably wouldn't have achieved as much as I did because I wouldn't have that monkey on my back, So at the time I thought it was the worst possible thing. It turned out to be good. I think there's a lot of times in life where things that you think are good, like a guy wins the lottery, and then he goes broke in 2 years. He's going to be way more miserable 2 years after that, comparing the rest of his life to when he had $100 million. It's like, it's almost always happens.
It's interesting. Obviously not as cool as a Navy SEAL, but I remember when I was in the competition timeline in my life and I was like, this is what I want to do. I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I wanted to do I was starting the men's physique stuff. And I got screwed over in because the judging, it's like all political. And I remember I didn't get what I wanted, which at the time was a pro card. And then I was like, all right, this industry, I'm only going to focus on just making content because it was right around the same time.
Yeah.
And doing that at the time, I remember being I felt so oh, they me over. I'm getting messages from, this is back in Facebook. People were messaging me on Facebook you got robbed. And I felt so hurt that I didn't get what I was trying to get for so many years. And then it turned out to be one of the biggest blessings because then I just shifted my focus onto something else that to me didn't feel like it was where I should have been going, but it's what gave me everything else that I have in my life today. Yeah. But I'm focusing on something else. And it's just, life is funny like that, where it is sometimes the things that we think are, not the direction we want to go in, but it's the direction we need to go in. So. Yeah.
And as a control freak, I think the biggest thing that I learned on mushrooms was just let go. Because you have to. You can't control everything. And when you're shrooming, if you try and control everything, it's going to freak you out. You have to let go. And so I think that was one of the big lessons that I learned was like, it's okay to let go sometimes. It's okay to like, and honestly, dude, it's only a perception of control. Like you don't actually have control. Like just because you try really hard at something doesn't mean it's going to happen, you know, like, so I think this idea that you can just, you know, control everything, it's just an illusion anyway. So when you take a breath and relax and just say, okay, well, you know, what's going to happen? And I'm not saying like, don't prep and don't, you know, do the work, but I'm just saying, don't get so hung up on, you know, the end result. It's just like, look, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Like do the work, put yourself in a good position, but like, don't be so focused on the outcome. And I think by not focusing on the outcome, it's like, you know, the more you build something up, the more nervous you're going to be, the more scared you're going to be, and then the more likely you are to fail. Like so often, like fear is a big governor. So yeah, I would just, you know, the advice I would give to people is just kind of like, let go and just, you know, do what you think is right and don't worry so much about what happens. Like just take it as it comes, you know, like, cause I tried to control everything, dude. And it made me miserable, honestly.
Yeah.